Yellowknife and the NWT, like any place, has social issues. But as I walk around downtown today, it seems more prevalent than it has in the past. I'm on a mission to find out why. My name is John Stanley, and this is the Storytime Podcast. All right, welcome to episode 6 of the Storytime Podcast. I've got Ira Layden, an old friend of mine from Newfoundland. I'm going to give you a few details on him so that you'll understand how we met. Everybody knows my story. I was, obviously involved in some criminal behavior in the past, and ended up in prison for a couple of years. It's not something that I've been shy about. And Ira was actually one of the correctional officers that was on our unit. So, I'll let him introduce himself and give a little bit of briefing on himself there, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure. So, like you just said, my name is Ira Layden. I'm from the east coast of Canada, St. John's, basically outside St. John's, Newfoundland. Canada, or should I say, I guess Canada doesn't end at Nova Scotia. There is a small island in the North Atlantic, which is Newfoundland, and it's a population of about 500,000 people. But basically, I was a correctional officer for just under 15 years. At Her Majesty's Penitentiary in St. John's, Newfoundland. And it's the oldest prison. It's still up and running. And that's where I met John Stanley. Like I said, I was a correctional officer, and John Stanley, you ended up coming in due to mishaps.
Yes, sir.
And that's basically where me and you first got in contact with each other. And through the jigs and the reels and all that kind of shit, we stayed in contact. It's
well, you know what, and it's funny, Ira. Like you were one of the I always felt one of the better correctional officers down there, and I don't know the details of why you left, and you can get into that yourself. But the thing yeah, for sure. But at the end of the day, there were guys down in that prison that I know that were dirty correctional officers, right? And you were not one of them, and I know that for a fact. And I would testify under. No, that's 100%. You were not one of them, and I know that. I know obviously as a, being inside, I knew everything that was going on and what was happening in there. And you were not involved in anything in any way, shape, or form. And it always struck me funny that the guards that to me were the better guys, and it's interesting because yourself, like guys like Scott O'Neill, people like that were respectful to the inmates, and that the inmates actually liked and appreciated. You still did your job, but you treated people like human beings, which is what you're supposed to do at the end of the day. And it was interesting how some of the guys who, quite honestly, I thought were a little bit of, assholes, were the ones that seemed to move up the ranks.
Those guys. No. And exactly, and like you just said, like guys like myself and Scotty O'Neill, and I'm not trying to be modest on saying myself, but I mean, like when I first started at the penitentiary, I've always said this person who's doing time, even though they're inmates, I hate using the name inmate, but it is what it is. But I just use it as this guy doing time. This could be my father, my brother, or my grandfather. It could be any family member. At the same time, is that for me myself, my motto is that the judge in the courts, they give the punishment of time to the guy who does the crime. It's not my responsibility as a correctional officer to inflict any more punishment on the guy who's down there doing that. So yes, you have guys like myself, Scotty O'Neill, Jason Taylor, and I won't use too many names just because it's depending.
Well, those are definitely two guys I agree with you on for sure. The great people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was guys like that. I mean, it's it wasn't my responsibility to, as a correctional officer, to inflict any more punishment on a guy who was doing time down there. So when I went to work, that's what I did. I went to work. I'd done my 12 hours in there, and those 12 hours in there was basically fucking. I mean, I went in there to hopefully better somebody's life, to let a person who's ran through the misfortunes of whatever their situation would be. But like, if I was going to treat a guy fucking bad down there, he was going to make my time bad down there, and that's not what I wanted. Because I, like once I said, is that it's the judge, the courts who inflict whatever. It wasn't my job to inflict punishment. So when I went down there, I wanted to treat guys with respect because I watched all the movies, I read books, all that kind of crap. I know how prison worked even before I ever went in there. I was going to be an asshole because I know that it's going to come back on me. It's going to come back on family members and all that kind of crap.
Mm-hmm.
My outlook on it was to go down if I'm there for 12 hours, and some people might call me a bleeding heart, and that's fine. You can call me a bleeding heart. But I wanted to go down and be able to show guys that you don't have to live a wild criminal life to have a good time.
Nope.
I mean, it's wild in regard to the situation that was down there for. Like I said, I spent 14 years and 10 months. My situation, I'll let the viewers know that I was fired in 2015. I have no problem saying that. I've always told everybody that over the last 8 or 9 years I've been out of there. I was fired due to the fact of what I say was being human to people. I know it's a fucking prison, but you don't have to be an asshole fucking day in and day out to guys.
No, you don't.
To rehabilitate. I might jump back and forth here now and all that kind of stuff. I still
don't
got
worry
a bit
about
of
it, man.
anxiety in me here. So
Don't worry. Listen, and you know what? Listen, dude, don't worry about that. I mean, whatever you want to, however you want to go.
Yeah, no. I'll explain it, and especially to the viewers and all that kind of stuff. Basically, like my story starts as a 15 or 16-year-old. I wanted to be a correctional officer or a special education student, or a special education teacher. I grew up in a household, great family. I had it all. But I always wanted to help people. And the thing was is that my first cousin in 1990, he was convicted of murder of his mother, wrongfully convicted, Greg Parsons.
Yeah. I know Greg quite well. Yeah.
Exactly. So once I knew all that kind of situation, I was like, maybe I'll never be smart enough to be a cop, but I always wanted to be a correctional officer. That's what I'm gonna say. If I couldn't be a cop, I'll be a correctional officer to make a difference in somebody's life. So finally, I ended up in corrections. Well, my story went just like every other kid, I guess, in Canada. I wanted to be a hockey player. So I went away, and I know I'm jumping back and forth here now, but my story went, I ended up leaving Harbor Grace, Newfoundland at 16, 17 years old to go try to make it in hockey on the mainland, play junior hockey in Niagara Falls. I had done a prospect camp, conditioning camp in the NHL with the Leafs and Toronto Maple Leafs in 93, 94, all that kind of shit. When shit didn't work out for me through hockey, and knowing my cousin's situation, and me being brought up in a family that the way I was brought up, I wanted to make a difference in somebody's life. And that's the reason why I was thinking that special education teacher or or correctional officer cop. I was a little bit of a wild guy back in the day, 16, 17, 18 years old, never really in trouble. But I mean, I was, like in a small community of, I don't know, 2,000, 2,500 people. I hung out with some of the wrong crowd and whatever. But, and the inmate, I can't say the inmate, I guess the inmate lifestyle intrigued me. I always wanted to know what was on the go and and whatnot. But anyhow, once the hockey didn't work out for me, I said, well, fuck, I got to go to I got to go do something. The cops aren't going to take me because it's just at that point in time they wanted people who were speaking French. I didn't speak French, so I ended up going to university in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Done a college degree. I got a degree in sociology and gerontology with minors in criminology and psychology. I was on my way to a place called Rutland, Massachusetts, which is outside of Worcester, Massachusetts, to work in a group home for rich kids.
Oh, okay.
It was a group home for kids of rich families, and a lot of Canadians at that point in time in the area of New Brunswick were all going down there because the American dollar was so big and people were paying off student loans and shit like that. I just wanted to go to a big city and make some money. So anyhow, what ended up happening was I was going down there. Me and my girlfriend, who's wife now, who's also a correctional officer, as you know. Her father was a correctional officer at Her Majesty's Penitentiary, which is, I stated earlier, HMP is the oldest fucking prison in Canada. It's older in Canada.
It's a shithole.
Yeah, it's a shithole. No, I'm going to get to all that kind of stuff. Don't you worry. So he wanted his daughter back in Newfoundland. So when we're going through the whole process of me going to the States, to the Massachusetts area, he wanted her back in Newfoundland. The government were putting on, the Newfoundland government were just putting on a new course called the CORT program, C-O-R-T, Correctional Officer Recruit Training Program. And I was the very first person, I was one of the very first people who ever done that. I was the very first person, the very first class who done that program. But he wanted his daughter back here, so instead of me going to the States, I come back to Newfoundland, and I'm sure he pulled some strings to get me back there. But it was because I had a social science degree. So I came back to start my journey as a correctional officer, something that I always wanted to be. Like I said, when I brought back to Greg's name, and like all that kind of shit. And when I came back to the Her Majesty's Penitentiary in St. John's, it was still old school mentality. And the majority of the people that were down there were old school guys who come off the streets in the fucking 70s. They were handed the keys. What I was always told was that how they got their job was they went into HR and HR said, can you spell penitentiary? If they were spelling it right, that's how they got.
That sounds about right too. That sounds about right.
Exactly. But that whole mentality from the 70s is still up till today. It's still up till today. Yes, I've been out of the prison for 8 or 9 years due to being fired, and I'll get into that situation now in a little bit. But me coming back and getting a job at the penitentiary was something I always wanted to do since I was 15, 16 years old because of my cousin Greg, but also at the same time is because I wanted to help people. Call me a bleeding heart. I don't care what you call me. But I wanted to give people in life a fair shot because my personality is I'm a people person. I got no problems talking to you. I don't care where you come from, your background. I don't care if you got $1 million or got a fucking dollar in your bank account. You're still the same to me. As long as you're going to be nice to me, I'm going to be nice to you and respect to me and respect to you and all that kind of shit.
Yep, me too. That's how I feel.
And I'm so sorry for blabbing on and all this.
No, go for it, buddy.
Listen, I mean, it's great that you got me on here so that I can vent even 8 years later. But I went back into the penitentiary, and the penitentiary at that point of time, because the majority of the people that were working at the penitentiary were guys that were from the 70s and 80s of their background were brutal force and ignorance. It had nothing to do with rehabilitation. It was about if you spoke out of line, it was paramilitary, but if you spoke out of line, it was we're going to beat the piss out of this guy who's doing time, and we're going to teach him a lesson, and that's how we're going to integrate him back into society. But when you got a guy like me who's coming out in 2002 is when I started to pen. I'd done a social science background at St. Thomas University in Fredericton, New Brunswick. And when I come back out of there, I mean, what I was bred in my family and what I was bred in university and all that kind of shit is a lot different than these guys who were started in the 70s and 80s. but when I came back, my process of thought of how to help these people inside the prison who you're trying to integrate them back into the community and society and all that kind of shit, the staff down there didn't like the way that I worked. I wasn't down. I mean, Jesus, I didn't, I didn't make myself. I wasn't down there 6 months. Really, I didn't get through the fucking interview process or the court program with them having concerns about the way I thought about corrections. Like I said, like once I'm coming from the background of social science, and it was a liberal arts university.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm liberal because I'm not liberal, but whoever you want to be. But I mean, what was put into me for 4 or 5 years coming into university and all that kind of stuff, then all of a sudden you go into the prison because it's a different life inside the prison. But you're being taught everything that I was taught in university through all these courses of sociology, psychology, criminology, gerontology. Most people don't know what gerontology is. That's the study of aging. It was gerontology is the study of aging, which is basically helping old people die. So the four things that I'm involved in university is all in helping people. That's my personality. That's the way I was growing up, and it is what it is. And then, but all of a sudden, once you go from that kind of environment into a environment behind walls, and people don't understand what's behind walls. You understand it, but things change because it's a new society and environment and culture behind those walls. And then when I'm behind those walls doing this court program, I'm being taught by people who were brought in the 80s that were brutal force and ignorance was accepted. I mean, you didn't change a guy's behavior by hog tying his feet and hands behind his back and beating the piss out of him. That's what they believed in those days.
Well, you do, but you make them worse. You make them worse. You don't make them better.
Exactly. No, right. Exactly, and that's what I mean. So they wanted this first course that's called the court program to come in with people that were university educated. And you don't have to be university educated to be down there. I mean, you got to be human is what you have to be. But the social science background helps quite a bit. But then all of a sudden, when you go into this court program, then you are, and it's C-O-R-T, not C-O-U-R-T, like whatever. When you go into this program, you're being taught by guys that started at the penitentiary in the 80s that, like I said, was brute force and ignorance and all that kind of shit. So then your whole mindset is changing because in the back of your head, you're thinking, I just moved from New Brunswick back to Newfoundland. I'm basically doing it for my girlfriend, who is now white, so I won't hold that back. She's a correctional officer also, as you're aware. Her father was a captain at the penitentiary, so I'm coming back kind of to please everybody. But what I dealt with for the, say, 5 years of university, now I'm working with guys who are front line, and they're kind of telling me everything that I learned in university is now different. They're saying, oh, you're only doing this for the books. You're only doing this on the books and all this kind of crap. And because you're trying to keep a job or just get a job and to make money, to start a life, all that kind of shit, then you're picking and choosing and you're guessing in your head what's right and what's wrong. Like, did I learn something fucking wrong in university? Or these guys telling me whatever? But I mean, you go in, you're intimidated by the staff that are there that are teaching you. So then you're trying to do everything to be, you're almost a yes man to these people. Yeah. But as time goes on, once you get the uniform and you're going inside the prison, you're seeing whatever, then you're finally seeing exactly what's going on. And then your personality comes out that what I learned in this program is not really right or acceptable. It's what my parents taught me back in the day. Maybe even a little bit what university taught me. It's being human. It's being caring. I don't care if anybody calls me a broken heart. It's doing what's right. And that's what brings me to my prison story, my correction story, is that when I went in there, my attitude was, I wasn't there to inflict inflict punishment on any guy who was doing time. I was there to help him rehabilitate, change his life, and hopefully for him to understand, because I didn't work with any females, that's why I'm saying him. And it was to let those people understand that you don't have to be a hard ass or a hard ball and sorry for your situation that you grew up in, that there's opportunity out there. And even though these guys that you sat with in prison for 10 or 15 years in the 80s and 90s, even though me being a young buck at like early 20s and these guys being in their 40s and 50s, there's somebody out there cares. Mm-hmm. And I was the guy that went in and I cared. And over my time, I showed that I cared. And I respected the guys that were doing time. They respected me. But over time, what ended up happening is that these officers who worked down there thought that, why should I get respect? I must be doing something bad to get respect from all these hard asses. And like, you know, I don't want to give names, but I mean, a guy like Ray Noftel, who was a notorious Newfoundland inmate, criminal. I don't know if he's alive now because I've been out of there 8 or 9 years. I got along with Ray Noftel. Most staff hated him, but I talked to him as a person. You got Ralph Driscoll. I don't know if you know the name Ralph Driscoll.
I know Ralph, yeah. I know him, yeah.
These guys were guys that were beating the shit out of guys in the 80s and 90s and all that kind of shit. And then all of a sudden you got this young punk, Ira Layden, coming into work. And now all of a sudden it's almost like I won't say I changed their outlook, but I tried to change their outlook. And that's all I wanted to do, is let them know that, boys, I'm not here to fucking hurt you. I'm here looking for your safety just as much as I'm looking for mine. And as time went on, these guys, the Ray Noftels and the Eugene Driscolls and the Ralph Driscolls, they told all the younger guys coming in, because, I mean, all the prison politics, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Oh, yeah. Well, don't fuck around with Layden. He's best kind. He's not going to, you know, he's not going to give you a hard time if you don't give him. And as time went on, I built rapport with guys, with inmates and all that kind of stuff. And my situation ended up going from one of Newfoundland's most notorious inmates, which is Philip Pinn. I'll give the name.
Phil, Philly, yeah.
Right, because he's, you know, it's in the media and all that kind of stuff. So then what they ended up saying was, I was looking out for high-profile inmates. And I was never looking out for high-profile
No, that's not true, man. That's just not true. No.
And the thing, like, when you came in on your situation, and you had some guys there with you and all that, and if you don't want me to talk about it, I won't talk about it.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Well, like when you came in and you and the other two guys, very high profile when you guys came in. Mm-hmm. And then, and I built a bond with you and those two guys, because you get no choice in the matter but build bonds inside the prison. Yeah. Yes, I'm there for 12 hours a day, sometimes 24, but you build bond with guys in there. I wasn't in there doing anything illegal for any high-profile inmate whatsoever. It had
no,
nothing
you were
to do
not.
with,
no, you were not.
Right? It had nothing to do whether it was a guy like Philip Pinn, a guy like John Stanley. It was a guy like Ray Noftel or Ralph Driscoll. I treated everybody the same, even to the point of, and this might make me look bad, because you can look up Nelson Hart. And Nelson Hart's story is a sad story, mm-hmm. but I treated him the exact same thing as I treated everybody else. And it is what it is, because I look for the best in everybody and hope to give a little bit of a chance and whatever. But what they ended up doing with me, because it was old school mentality inside the prison, is that when they seen a guy like John Stanley and Philly Pinn coming in, and John Stanley and Philly Pinn respected just a young correctional officer as Ira Layden, well, he must be doing something illegal in order to get the respect of John Stanley and his two buddies, and a guy like Philly Pinn and his associates and whatever Philly is into.
Mm-hmm.
Which is furthest from the fucking truth. I never fucking knew you from a hole in the ground, man, until you come inside.
Nope. Nope. But the thing is, man, it's just like, and this is what they don't seem to understand. I know who the guards were, and there were guards down there that were doing things, and some of the people that you just mentioned, they were doing for those people. And I know who they were, and I'm not going to mention their names, but at the end of the day, you were not one of them. And I know that for a fact, right? Certainly some of the other guys I know that got accused in the same kind of a line were not involved in that stuff either. It's interesting to me. And the respect that you guys got wasn't that. I mean, I'll give you an example. You go in there. I mean, I'm walking in there and I've got a big reputation, but I'm trying to lay low and keep my, because I want to get out. I'm not interested in anything else, right? And you're not really told anything when you go in there. You got to figure things out as you go in. I've never been in there before, and you get a guy like Lieutenant T there. He's coming in and he's walking in there trying to be the big man with you and all that kind of stuff, and no respect. And I never liked him. I never treated him with respect the entire time I was in there, and that's why I didn't.
Why did you?
When you get guards that came in and treated you like a human being, talked to you, joked with you, whatever, and realized that you're more than whatever this particular incident was, then you're going to treat them with respect. Like an example I use for everybody was when I saw the church riot that happened there when they went after Kenny. O'Neill's in there by himself, and I said, you see, no one touched O'Neill. No one touched O'Neill. They could have touched O'Neill, no problem. He was by himself in there for a little bit. I watched that video. But they didn't. And the reason they didn't is because he respected them. He showed them respect. He treated them like human beings, Yes. And you were the same, and you were the same way.
And exactly. And that's what I've said to people over the years. I'm still in contact with people down there and all that kind of shit, whether they're inmates or staff. But that's the exact same thing. Because I said, once I go in there to do my job, when I leave, I got family to take care of and all that kind of shit. I'm not going to be down there being an asshole and all that kind of shit and deal with whatever. I've had stories of people telling me they've been over to Avalon Mall, which the big mall for anybody who's listening. It's the big mall in St. John's. But they've been to Avalon Mall. They've been at Dooley's, pool halls, bars, all that kind of shit. They run into ex-fucking inmates, and when they run into ex-inmates, these guys have had to hide under pool tables, because they're out with their girlfriend and their wife. They've been walking through the Avalon Mall with their wife and two kids and tell their wife and two kids, you got to go into the store now and hide out behind the clothes rack. I'm not fucking looking for that.
But you wouldn't have to do that.
No, exactly. That was the thing, because that's what I mean, is that when I went to work, I done what was needed or what was safe and all that kind of shit, but I treated everybody with respect. I didn't care what you're in for. I didn't care if you're in for stealing a block of butter or for murder, because you got all sorts of people down there. I treated everybody equally on the same plateau and all that kind of shit. But like, you got corrections, right? Down there. What?
Like corrections, not at the end of the day, they forget what correctional officer means, right? It's not punitive. It's correctional. The punishment is losing your freedom.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. It's the corrective behavior that they went in for. It's not to make them worse than what they were before they came in.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the people down there, because a lot of the fucking staff down there, and I'll speak for the time that I was down there, 14 years, 10 months, been out for 9 years, but I still hear stories. But the majority of the people that were down there at my point of time, once the old school got out of there, the majority of the people that they brought in were people that were coming out of fucking, like, they worked at Subway. They worked at the chicken farm. They worked at this and that and whatever. Like, they didn't come from a background of any type of education. I mean, Jesus, what do you do? If a heart surgeon, you wouldn't take a freaking heart surgeon and put him in as a heart surgeon role just because he stood back sucking blood off the floor for 15 years at a hospital.
Yeah.
So you got to have, like, if you're looking to rehabilitate people, and if you're looking to make a difference in somebody's life, and to know basically everything that comes around what it is to be a correctional officer, because a correctional officer is not just somebody who's in turning keys and fighting or wrestling with people. There's all sorts of different aspects of being a correctional officer. But because it's snowballed over the last like 30 years from old school people into thinking that brute force and ignorance, and the only way that you're only going to help a person is by beating if he tells you to go fuck himself. Like, I had no problems. Like, if you told me, or if Joe Blow down there told me to go fuck myself, I'm not going to write him up a charge or slap him or punch him in the face because he told me to go fuck himself. The chances are I probably told him to go fuck himself.
Yeah.
But there's certain people down there who were probably bullied all their life, and they come from a background of whether it was being bullied or just looking for a frigging job. They got no clue of. They got zero social skills. And these are the people that are friggin' wearing uniforms down there that still have no social skills. And that's the reason why the prison is in the way that the prison is still today. Because I hear from guys that I used to work with, guys that are still working there, that are still friends of mine. I mean, I hear from, right here in my own household. I can't say too much.
No, of course, yeah.
But I mean, like, I still hear it. I mean, it's just as bad or worse today than what it was 20 years ago. Because they just hire people on in there just to put a uniform on. It's not a person going in there to make a difference or hoping to rehabilitate or make a difference. It's just people going in there to look for a fucking job, so they get $1,500, $2,000 every 2 weeks, and they get a pension in 25 years.
Yeah.
But why the fuck would you want to go into to be a mechanic if you want to build furniture?
Yeah.
Why do you want to be a mechanical engineer if you want to be a farmer? Why do you want to go to the penitentiary if you don't to work at the penitentiary if you don't want to help people? It's because of the culture and all that kind of shit that's come on through over the years that people down there, officers, believe that we're not there to help, or they're not there to help. They're just there for a job, for the paycheck, just like a key in. But there's more to a correctional officer than that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And because I was trying to be that person, the old school mentality thought that I was the most dirtiest person in the world. I mean,
well, and Ira, there's one like just as an example, you talk about the bully type, and it's interesting. I won't say who the guard is because I know he's friends with some of my friends, but there's one guard down there. I never liked him. I never liked him at all, right? And honestly, what's that?
Our last one. You don't have to say that.
No. He had the same last name as Jason, but anyway,
Oh, okay, yeah, I got you.
PT, he's one of them, and like there's other ones, right? There's other ones, but he struck me because he was on my unit a lot, and he didn't say much to me, obviously, you know what I mean? Because this is the thing about it. I found that the guys who are like that, they're real selective of who they're like that with, right? And so none of the guards really ever really bothered me much when I was down there. There was a couple guys, but he was friends with my friends, but. I mean, I found him to be that bully kind of guy, and I know of things that happen on the street with him outside of the place where he didn't hold that same energy when he wasn't there in that uniform with 10 guys behind him. And, yeah, right. So he go ahead.
And that's what I say. Like, why be a tough guy inside the prison wearing a uniform when you got 40 staff coming behind you? Like, if I'm gonna say to John Stanley, "Oh, you're a fucking mouthpiece," or "You're a cocksucker," or "You're scum," or a dirtbag," because that's the way that they talk down there.
Yeah.
If I'm not gonna say, I would never say nothing to your face by myself than what I would say with 40 people behind me. But a lot of those people, that's what they do. They say it with the people behind them, but then they turtle and they're gutless and run away outside. And that's the mentality down there, because they're protected. They're protected down there. Yeah. Or they think they're protected. Until you come into a small city of 150,000 people, and then you run into them at a Dooley's or downtown, and then they're crying foul.
The ball game changes. Yeah.
I'm going to call the fucking cops on you because you're doing this and doing that. Well, buddy, listen, you're your own fucking worst enemy. you done this to me and treated me like a bag of shit inside the fucking prison.
Yeah.
This is it's coming around. It's karma, man. It's coming around.
And these guys don't realize, like, like I mean, I was obviously a different case. I came from a good family, all that kind of stuff. So I mean,
Yeah,
I knew where I was headed when I got out. So I wasn't gonna do anything down there,
yeah,
to get myself in further charges or whatever. But you take a guy like Philly Pinn, right? I feel he's not much of a
yeah.
problem down there when it comes to physical stuff and everything else. But I
No,
mean,
no.
like, this is a guy who, like, people should have a little bit of sympathy for. This kid grew up in a family where they put him into the criminal life. When he was 5 and 6 years old, they had him in
Exactly.
shoplifting, doing all these things. He's never had anything else but that. There was no positivity in his life. It was all
Yeah,
negative criminal behavior. And you get to a
yeah.
point where he's now, like you said, he's a little notorious. I mean, he can't get a job. He can't get, like, there's nobody willing to help this guy, right? So where's he going? Where's he going? Like, what's he going to do, right? Nobody wants to help him.
And that's the thing. Yeah, and that's the thing. And I mean, like Philly was the main person involved in my situation when I got fired. Like I said, I got fired for two breaches of policy and the conduct on becoming, but it was all in regard to Philly and a couple other, I won't call high profile inmates, but guys that were involved with him that
Mhm.
that they thought that I was doing favors for him. But all I got, like, I knew Philly right from the get go. The first time I ever walked inside the prison, um, you got no other choice but to build rapport and build relationship with guys down there. Um, when you got a guy like Philly Pinn who's coming up to the wickets, they are up to the bubble, whatever you want to call it, and he's asking for this and asking for that. I mean, over time, you build rapport and you build relationship with these guys.
Yeah.
And I read files on his mom, on his dad, on his sister, all that kind of shit. He didn't have a chance. He didn't have a
Not a
chance right from
chance,
the
not a
fucking
prayer.
get go. That's what I'd say. And so when he would come up and he like ask for a phone call. Now for the listeners that are here, there's a pay phone on the unit. And then there's a payphone inside the bubble where the officers, not a payphone, just a normal phone that's inside that officers can pick and choose
At the
who and when they
discretion,
want to
yeah.
give a phone call to. On discretion, right? So, but when you got like a guy like Philly Payne, who I just find out at this point in time, just had a kid, he's the only person bringing money in. Now, no matter how he was bringing the money in, it is what it is. But when you're inside the freaking prison and you got to call off this payphone, and what's the first call is like $2.50, and every minute is like 25 cents or 10 cents. I mean, you're putting people right. How are you going to fucking rehabilitate? Once he gets out of prison, they got to go right back to steal just to pay the phone bill that they had during their time in jail. So I was give phone calls. I mean, everybody knew it. It had no difference if I was giving the phone call or if TT was giving the phone call or any of these guys were, signing off on special requests for phone calls. But as much as other people hated Philly Pinn and called him a dirtbag of why would you give him a phone call, these same staff members who said that to me would come to me within weeks when their friend's son was in, their nephew was in, this one was in. Can you give my Joe Blow down here a phone call? So they're picking and choosing right from the get
Yeah,
go
yeah, yeah,
of
exactly.
like that kind of shit. But like I said, like Philly didn't have a hope. There's a lot of people that didn't have a hope, but that's the reason why that I took rapport to Philly to let him know, like, buddy, I knew you grew up in a fucking rough household where every family member under there and your step family and all that kind of shit on time. People care about you. And people who are going to listen to this pod, I'm sure that if you don't, like, once it's shared, like, I'm going to share it over my Facebook, and it's all going to go back to people that, that know me, and they're going to tell me I'm an idiot, this and that. But I didn't give a fuck if you're a Philly Pin or if you're Joe Blow who was never ever spotted. I always wanted to help out, whatever.
That's the thing though. Like, I don't know if you knew this or not, but I mean, when I was down there, I was involved in the inmate committee. So we'd go up and meet with the white
Yeah, I
shirts and all
remember
that kind of
that.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I
and I
remember
used
that.
to leave there like shaking my head. How is it possible that these people are in charge of anything when they're this stupid? I mean, it was incredible to me. I mean, the most basic concepts in about like you're actually causing more harm than your issues than you're
Yeah,
solving. And this is what these guys don't seem to understand. You get a guy like I love, like Gary Hennessy. Well, I don't mind saying
yeah.
Gary's name. You get a guy like Gary
Gary,
Hennessy.
Gary's my cousin.
Yeah. And I
Gary's
know
my
Gary
cousin.
very well because Gary was involved with us
Yeah,
back in the day. And
yeah,
I've always really liked Gary. I know he's done some bad things, but I've always really liked him. And Gary, but Gary's Gary will throw down. He's a violent guy if you
yeah,
push him and all that kind of stuff. And like these guys, I don't understand what they thought they were doing. You're going to push this guy over simple things, right? You're
yeah.
going to, like push him like lock him down early because they were too loud watching a hockey game or something like that.
Yeah.
What do you think this guy's going to do? Right? He
Exactly,
doesn't
exactly.
care. He doesn't care about charges. He doesn't care about going to jail. He's been in and out of jail his whole life. And if
Yeah.
you push him, he's going to get violent, right? If you get violent with
Oh
him, he's
yeah.
going to get violent back, right? And the thing is they didn't. I watched one night on the unit, five of them standing outside his cell. They would not go in. Five of them there. They had a shield, everything. They still wouldn't go in. They waited for him to go to sleep, and they went back and got him later, right?
Yeah.
And then something happened down when they got him down in handcuffs down in then they're going to do something to him, right? But you think he's not going to come back on you for that? Like these
Listen,
kids,
and that's
you know,
that's exactly, and that's what I'm saying. A lot of guys down there, and I don't just mean guys, I mean girls, and I'll base them all because it's 50-50 down
for
there now,
sure, for
guys and
sure.
girls. Why go down and fucking antagonize a guy who's got mental health issues, who's down there, who's pissed off? Why antagonize it? Like, what is it that you're getting out of it? If
Exactly.
you have to know, you got to have some type of fucking common sense to realize that a guy like Hennessy, he don't forget.
No.
Whether, he's coming back at you inside jail or he's coming back outside of jail. But why go down there and be an asshole to a guy and to antagonize a guy, like, and not
when you
expect
when
him
your job
to
when your job
understand?
is to do the opposite of that, like your job, like at the end of the
Yeah, that's
day,
what I mean.
like you treat someone like an animal, you treat them like a piece of dirt. Well, that's what they're going to act like.
Yeah,
And I found it
yeah,
really interesting because, like I said, me and my two friends, we were
yeah,
treated well down there, but
yeah.
for the most part, because they didn't want to get involved or antagonize us or cause issues with us. And it's like, why are you being selective? Why are you being selective about who you mess with and because this guy's some guy who comes from a poor family or a rough background. And Gary's not the case. His dad's actually successful, but like
Exactly.
there's lots of families out there, like they're like Philly's example, like they're
Actually, his mom works for the Justice Department,
yeah,
or
I
she
mean, he's got a
did.
successful family. I mean,
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, fuck
and
yeah.
I mean, his sister's a great artist. Like, there's a lot. They're good
Oh, she's
people,
dead.
but I
Yeah,
mean, at the end of the day, like, why, like you said, someone who's got mental health issues, someone who's got addiction issues, got all these problems. Why antagonize him? Why cause an issue? Put him in a situation where he's going to pick up another charge, where you might get hurt, where
yeah,
somebody else might get hurt. When you could literally just talk to this guy, because when you talk to him, he's very reasonable. You talk to this
yeah.
guy and treat him with respect, and then he'll do the same. It's simple.
And that's the thing is, like you want to go in if there's a situation like that, it shouldn't have to come to fisticuffs and blows. They could go in and de-escalate the situation. You'd be able to talk to him. Why rise it up? But the majority of the people only rises it up because he's by himself, and you got five other guys behind yourself, behind your back, and
Exactly.
that's the reason why. And I stated this when I was fired back in the day, and I done an interview with MTV or whoever, CBC or the Telegram, local newspapers back in Newfoundland, and all that kind of stuff. I said at that point in time, there's so many alphas that are wearing so many alphas that are down there wearing the uniform, but they're only alpha when they're wearing uniform.
Mhm.
Once they get out of the fucking uniform,
They're
they
pretty
ain't
beta.
alphas.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, I've worked side by side with people up to, I'll call it 15 years, 14 years, 10 months, up to 15 years. And they try to, like, they try to play it as we're friends and all that kind of shit. Now, but listen, I know what happened over the years, and you were nowhere around to be fucking friends. But you guys play it off that you're the toughest fucking guys inside when you're protective or protected, but on the outside, you're frightened to death. You're little kitty cats.
They're scared, yeah.
You know, do the
And
same.
they shouldn't have to be. That's the thing. They shouldn't have to be. Like at the end of the day, like, you should if you treat people with respect. I mean, obviously there's some guys down there that are a little, that are just piece. I'll call a spade spade. There's guys down in the prison that are on the inmate side that are pieces of shit. I mean, there's no question about it. But at the same time, a process happened to make them that way, and that's what people don't seem to understand. And the reality of it is if you go down there and you do your job and you treat people with respect, then you're not going to have any issues when you're on the outside. Everybody understands you're doing a job, right? You have a job to do, right? But if you go out of your way to mess with people, well, then and make people. And the thing is you're making people's lives uncomfortable. They're already uncomfortable. And don't get me wrong, you committed a crime. You're in jail. That's the you put yourself there. But at the end of the day, you lost your freedom. You're already stressed. I would find like things like something would happen and they would take the TVs off the range. And I would say to Tobin, do you think you're helping things right now? So because one inmate did something on this range and you can't figure out who it is, you're going to take all the TVs off. So now you got all the inmates pissed off. And you got a bunch of guys who got ADHD and a whole bunch of other things, plus addiction issues. And now they got nothing to do. So what do you think they're going to do with their time? Right? I'll tell you what they're going to do with their time. They're going to get up to no good, right?
Exactly, and beat the place out of beat the piss out of the place. But and the thing, like when I think back on it, the communication between like management and everything was fine down there. And there was always one guy on the unit who was always passing a little bit of information off to the staff that were there. So if an assault happened, then we would know who done it, whether it was one guy who beat the piss out of somebody or if it was 5 guys. And we would always say that kind of stuff. Why lock down the whole fucking unit for a beef between Joe Blow and Jack Blow?
Yeah. Exactly.
We already knew, but now you're locking them down because you say that there's an investigation going on. And you're going to lock them down from Friday until Monday because no lieutenant wanted to deal with anything on Friday afternoon. So then no lieutenant comes in on Saturday and Sunday. So you'd be fucking locked in all Saturday and Sunday. And all these guys are full of piss and vinegar, which is, I don't blame those people for being full of piss and vinegar. And obviously they're going to start beating on doors, flooding the place out. When all you had to do was a person in management, lieutenant, captain, whoever was there on Friday, who already knew who the victim was and who was the accused or who the person who laid the assault on, just fucking get rid of that. Like, don't punish everybody
and make the situation worse. Yeah.
But then the snowball effect goes in, and then all of a sudden, like, you'd have staff go in and unlock everybody, because there was a 21 or 22 inmates on one side, like one from the other. So by this time you got 1 or 2 guys off the unit on a Monday morning saying, "Oh, the investigation is complete." After 21 guys have just been locked down in 35-degree weather in the summertime, toilets not working, warm water being drank, all that kind of shit. So when you go in and unlock them on Monday morning, and you say, "Boys, okay, you're unlocked here now," and they would vent their frustrations of, "Well, why the fuck was I just locked in for the last 30 days when you guys already knew?" We're just in the gracious, just saying, like, the front line is just saying, like, we're just doing what we were told and all that kind of shit. But at the same time, you feel for the guys who were just fucking locked in, man, for 3 days.
Yeah, and then they won't give them they won't give them something like, like we talked about that, and I said, I remember one particular summer and that happened, and then it was like, okay, so it's 35 degrees, like you said, so everybody's dying, there's sweat in there, there's no air, there's no ventilation, the conditions in that prison are terrible, as you know, right? And ultimately, you go in and you go talk to the lieutenants and say, "Look, can we get some fans for the cell? Can you even get small fans?" "Oh, no, they could make a tattoo gun out of them." I said, "Well, when someone ends up dying of heat stroke or something in here, is that going to be enough for you?" There's no thought process. Like you're a piece of dirt, right? Like you're treated like you're a piece of dirt.
That's the old school mentality of the managers. I mean, any of the managers that were down there, didn't have any background in any of that type of education. It doesn't have to be a social science education, but any type of education in regard to the what would happen to a guy who has chest problems or heart problems, liver problems, being shoved in a cell with you and your buddy in there, shitting and pissing for 2 or 3 days that can't flush a toilet, and you're breathing in all that shit and piss because all you did was lay one of the like a little fucking cover over the toilet.
Yeah.
So, but they didn't care about that because that's what I'm saying.
No water sometimes in the cells either at all. You'd have to, like fill up a water bottle if you were lucky enough to get someone's attention to get the water bottle filled up. I mean, it's like people don't realize like in some of these prisons, and I mean that one's one of the worst. I mean, remember they did the report and it was called Decades of Darkness. Now I read that thing in detail, and I mean it's horrific down there, man. I mean, not just for the inmates either, for the guards. I mean, the conditions are terrible. So you've got these horrible conditions, bad air quality, I mean, obviously like I said, the cells are dirty, you smell piss as soon as you walk into place. Even when they're clean, it just doesn't work, right? And they treat you like a dog and then expect you to come out of there and be a normal person. Now, if you didn't have the kind of supports or I mean, some education or the intellect that we had, and we were able to come out and change our lives, but we changed our lives on our own. No one helped us at the end of the day. I mean, that was something that we just made a decision that we were going to do it, and that was it. But these people really don't have that support. They don't have anything in there.
That's what I'm going to say. Like when you were in there, I mean, I remember delivering books to you because you were doing your schooling and all that kind of shit. You were studying on your own.
Yeah.
Other people don't have the intellect or even the up to try to do and make the time, their best to do something with their time while they're in there for 2 or 3 years and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So these fellas are just sitting there, just wasting. They're wasting away. I mean, yes. I mean, and I love the fact and so proud of the fact that you beat the system, because the majority of the fucking guys that come in there and they don't get the chance to beat the system because nobody gives them the opportunity to beat the system.
They're not equipped, and no one gives them the tools.
Have something that they can beat the system.
Yeah, they don't have the tools, and no one wants to give them the tools, and that's the reality, right? And like there's no. Some of them have been in and out since they were young kids. Like they started off in reform school, and people gave up on them, and it's just like a cycle, and the court system doesn't help either, because I believe. You see guys get out on Friday, they're back on Monday if they even lasted that long, and that like there's got to be something better than that. Like, I mean, there's got to be a way to get these guys in there and get them into some kind of training and counseling and reskill them and
Well, yeah, I'm sure they can figure something out at the penitentiary to be able to reskill people. Like, yeah, they got the woodworking shop and all that kind of stuff, but they take, like, say 2 guys down and let them do a little bit of stuff. But if you got 190 inmates down there, whether it's 150 to 190, whatever it is, I'm sure the government can come up with money, and I'm sure a lot of the staff members down there have a few skills that they can take guys aside and be able to maybe do a little bit of plumbing or the woodworking or any of that kind of stuff. But when they come in and there's nothing for these guys to do, they're let out at 8:30 in the morning and locked up at 11:30 at night, and they have nothing to do, only think about other criminal acts that they can do to make money for when they get out to survive, because nothing is offered to them. They only get like $250 in social services, but they're stressed out over this whole phone system that was going on while I was down there. But they know the supports aren't down there for these people that are coming out of jail. That you as a society is paying tax money to keep these guys down there, to rehabilitate them, so that when they come out, they're not doing the same things that they were doing that sent them in there. When they come out, in my eyes, they're fucking worse when they come out than what they ever did when they went in.
Oh, 100%, 100%. 100%. I'd see them coming in like 18, 19-year-olds coming in there, and I used to try and talk to a lot of the inmates down there and stuff like that, and try and steer them on a path and whatnot, but they don't. they're not listening. They're listening to the other guys because they know them from the street or whatever. But like,
But they think it's
they
cool.
come in
They think it's
they
cool to
come
be
in.
a fucking bad guy.
It's criminal school, yeah, because that's all that's there. There's nothing else there. There's no
Yeah,
counseling. There's nothing really available. And if there is counseling, it's some dumbass who's not really qualified to do the counseling a lot of times, you
it,
know.
chances are it was somebody who was in a correctional officer uniform who who probably had a grade 12 education and 5 years on the job, but they said, oh, we'll send you up to the government, up to the Confederation building now and do a 24-hour course, 12 hours on Monday, 12 hours on Tuesday to do this course to be certified. And the only reason why that person is doing this 24-hour course is so that they don't have to be fucking working down the prison. There's 2 days off outside the uniform for that Monday or Tuesday. So then the government figures that, oh, well, we got them certified now because they've done 24 hours in class. Now they can go down and rehabilitate because
And they don't care either. That's the thing. They don't care about the
they don't
inmates,
care.
right?
All it is shut up. It's shut up courses, is what I call it. Go do a course, get this person to. We'll write them on like fucking just like a first aid. You go and do a first aid course, 2 days of first aid, and you're sitting there and you're reading. You're listening to a guy who's reading out of a book, and once the 24 hours or 2 days of first aid is done, you got a little bit of knowledge, but you don't have exactly what that knowledge is. That's what they do with this training stuff with the corrections here in Newfoundland is, oh, well, we'll do it. We'll bring you in for 2 days, 8 hours a day, so 16 hours. And when you're done, you're going to be now recertified. You never ever do that course again for probably 5 or 6 years, even though
Yeah.
that the course is up in 2 years. But that way, then, it's that the government can justify on their behalf saying that, oh, well, we got Joe Blow down there, Officer Joe Blow, we got him certified because we just brought him in for the last 2 days and taught him a course. Whereas that Joe Blow is saying that officer is saying, Monday and Tuesday, I got to go do this course. Well, I can get on the beer now on fucking Sunday night because I don't have to go down to the prison. I can go to this course at 9 o'clock on Monday and I can get on the beer Sunday night, go sit down and just listen to the Charlie Brown of wah, 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 wah for 2 days, get paid the biggest kind of money to fucking do it, be certified, and then the government don't care if you're certified or not. They're just, it's just a shut up thing is
They
what
don't.
it is.
And it's like the problem is really, and I know there's some, like I know some of the guys have moved into management now. That I know one at least that's a good dude. But I mean, for the most part, what I dealt with down there is
Yeah.
guys who weren't qualified to be in the position. I don't understand how they moved up through the ranks, and they were
But
and they
that's what I
were
mean. It's the same thing.
and
It's the
they
same thing right
and
there.
Mr. B there, OB,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
this guy literally calling me down to his office one day and
He
telling me
ordered
that,
me.
yeah, and so telling me that the RCMP had just been there and that there was a tip that there was a contract on my life and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff
I
and I
remember.
and I laughed my ass off at him basically, right? Like, I was like, yeah, yeah. I knew it was all lies, right? And then, I won't say who, but one of the guards actually looked at me when I was coming in the unit, good guy, and he said, basically it was bullshit. Don't pay
Yeah.
attention to it, right? And I knew it was anyway. But it's like this guy, like that unscrupulous behavior, and like he's down there, he's not a police officer, he's not involved. Like, why would you do something like that? Why would you lie like that? Why would you pretend that a situation like that was the case when you know it wasn't? I know I wasn't remotely concerned. I knew it was all a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
But like this guy's in charge. Like this guy's in charge, and he's my total experience with this individual, watching him and how he conducted himself there, how he dealt with the inmates, how he even dealt with the other guards in my presence
Yeah.
was, he's a Neanderthal, right? He shouldn't be there.
This is there's I can go so far on this here because when I first done my core program, he was my mentor and come right and coming up through and like when he went into security captain and all that kind of shit, he used to bring me out in his office and he'd ask me questions. Sometimes I would answer, sometimes I wouldn't. But when the time came down that he was assistant superintendent, he was the guy who fired me. And what he fired me for, even though, like I said, it was, I had a breach of policy, and my breaches of this. Oh fuck, man, you got me wild here now. Because what he, yeah, what he was after me for was fact that through words he used and was told, this is not on paper, this is only verbal, was that I was the godfather of the fucking St. John's mob with ties to a certain MC club in St. John's.
Oh my God, really?
And what's furthest from the truth. So then, like I said, I can go far on this. So,
well, I mean, I know that's not true. Go, buddy.
Exactly. And you would be. Exactly. I'm a fucking nobody. I was down there, I was being nice to people, but because I was being respected by people who were in the show, and this all stemmed from him, because this is the way he fucking treated people.
He's as dumb as bricks, though, dude. He really is.
What?
He's an idiot. Like he's not an intelligent man. Like honestly, he's one of the stupidest people I've met down there. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And the government allowed him to run the place.
Incredible.
And what happened? What I was told was I was under investigation for 14 or 16 months from the RNC, RCMP, and CSIS due to having a connection to a certain MC and to the St. John's mob. And it was just whatever. After this 14 or 16 months, RNC, RCMP, and CSIS cleared me from this because,
of course,
further from the fucking truth, I didn't know fucking what was on the go. So what I was told was that management of HMP was told that you ruined this guy's career. Somebody has to take accountability. So that's when OB that you're talking about said that we do have Ira on cell phone and Facebook of 2014 in Unit 1. So they fired me for 2 breaches of policy, Facebook, cell phone, and conduct on becoming by being nice. What they says is nice or too nice to inmates. I'm like, how the fuck do you decide who is nice or who is too nice? I come from a social science background, so yes, I understand that maybe I'm a little bit more lenient than fellas who grew up in the 80s who are now beating the piss out of people. But how the fuck can you have a guy like OB running to prison and calling the shots in there with zero education, zero personality, zero social skills, all that kind of shit, and he's a micromanager of trying to run an institution of 200 people, and these 200 people go from low security to very high security. So they said. I mean, that's what I've been told.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's true. Because he, it was guys like that who would pick and choose and say who's high security and who's low security, and like you just said your situation there, that you were brought in and told whatever, because it was a master manipulator. And that's all he's trying to do. They manipulate fucking staff, they manipulate fucking inmates, and that's what it come down to. My firing was he'd bring fellas in and sit down and have fucking cokes and cigarettes in the security office, and those fellas would go back into the unit after having a couple cigarettes, even though it was a non-smoking prison, and after having a couple cans of pop. And then those fellas would walk around the unison trying to figure out whatever they could on any other inmate or any other staff member. So this OB guy could justify his job and what he was going to do after he got out of the prison, after getting a 31, 32-year pension, and then move up into the Confederation as a contractor. because he blew smoke up the ass of fucking guys for years.
But it's
And
baffling to
then
me
his
though.
mentality, the next mentality, and that mentality next. Since I've been gone in 8 or 9 years, there's 4 other assistant superintendents who've been through the prison, whether they left on their own or fired. So there's a problem. There is a problem fucking somewhere, whether it's the Confederation building who's hiring, but I don't think it's the Confederation building who's hiring. I think it's the attitude of the culture that's been brought right on through since the 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever it has been.
Well, like I said, I mean, they're promoting people that, like, and I'm not trying to be a dick here, but I mean, I've sat down with him and with his superiors at the time, and I had conversations with them in the office and whatnot, and honestly, like, I mean, the rationale that they came up with some of the ideas they had. I mean, I honestly felt like I dropped 5 or 6 IQ points every time I walked out of the room with them, and I used to think to myself, even back then, they're dinosaurs. And I used to look around and say, like, there's so many people here in this prison right now that are wearing gray uniforms that will be far more qualified to do this job than this guy is. And it's just like it blows my mind. It always used to blow my mind how these, like I said, they got in when you had to be big and stupid and drag your knuckles on the ground. That was the only qualification you needed, right? Like you said, if you could spell penitentiary, sure. But like zero education, zero intellect. I mean, not like very intelligent people, really, in reality. I mean, it was so easy to, like, I'll give you an example. Like, I was involved in a little vehicle accident when I was down there with the and this they called me in, and yeah, and they tried to intimidate me. He tried to intimidate me, and I said, "Look, I don't know who you think you're talking to. I mean, I'm not one of these. I'm not one of the normal inmates here, and you're largely overstepping yourself right now. And I would suggest to you, Lieutenant Tobin, that you kind of mind your own business on this one and let the legal process take wherever it goes, kind of thing. Because you're certainly not." You're certainly not in a position, and you're trying to use your authority here to intimidate me and to keep me from pursuing a situation where in reality I've got an injury or whatever, and it's really none of your concern. This is between the insurance companies and the lawyers or whatever, and I'm sorry, you're overstepping yourself. And these guys just didn't seem to grasp that not everybody down there was an uneducated idiot that couldn't see past what they were doing. And I mean, like I said, I mean, I thought that personally, like, I could name off the top of my head even then like a dozen guys that were below these people that would do a much better job than them.
But that's the thing. Anybody who was somewhat educated or somewhat just a sensible rationale and all that kind of shit, they don't want to take those positions because those positions have always been filled by people that don't have a clue. Like they don't. So listen, like I said, I didn't want to talk about my wife or any of that kind of stuff. My wife is university educated. I like to think that she's a great person and all that kind of shit. She's had people, management ask her to apply, classification and all this kind of shit. And why don't you write the lieutenant's exam and the captain's exam? She doesn't want to because she knows that that the people in front of her, the majority of the people that go there are in those positions are people who probably suck their way through. It's like nobody they know what the position is hard to explain. They know what the position is. Like I say, my wife wouldn't want to be in there.
Well, I know your wife, and I always found her to be like a super respectful person like yourself, and
she is, and she is, and she'd be great in that kind of shit. And there's other people that would be great, but the people who are in those positions, and I can go right now, like like 8 or 9 years that I've been out of there. There's people in these lieutenant and captain positions that are there after only 2 and 3 years inside the prison because the people with 15 years and 20 years inside the prison don't want to go up into those positions because they know the stigma that over the years what will come behind us.
Yeah.
because other staff were sitting there on the bottom flat saying, oh, Joe Blow, Jane Doe, they're up in the lieutenant or captain's position this week. And all the gray shirts are stood around like, how the fuck did they get up there? They only got like 2 or 3 years on the job. They come from, well, shit, last I knew that they were selling clothes at fucking Walmart or selling, or they were the manager of Subway or like over at there like there's a guy right now, and I hope he sees this here. He was a ice cream delivery guy for Central Dairies, and he's the captain at the penitentiary right now.
A captain, wow.
So he might have 8 or 9 years on the job. I mean, how the fuck do you go from delivering milk or ice cream from Central Dairies or whatever it is? That's a shout out to Central Dairies. But how do you go from doing that kind of shit to running the prison with no education background? And I'm sure, and you don't have to be college, university, any of that kind of shit, fucking educated. But you didn't learn very much about fucking corrections by delivering milk or ice cream.
No,
but now all of a sudden, you're running a prison, and you're not just running the 200 inmates that are in there. You're also running the fucking 50 staff that are in there, and
directing them on how to conduct themselves, right? I mean, that's the
But that's what I mean. And like, if I was still working down there, I'd be saying like, how the fuck am I respecting a guy who's a fucking captain who's coming from fucking Central Dairies?
Yeah, or and doesn't have near the experience, right?
I know the background, and this guy was, he's to my understanding from staff members, he's not very well liked, and from the guys that are doing time, he's not very well liked. So I'm sure his personality is shit. Well, I know his personality is shit. But these are the people that somebody's approving it. Like, so who's approving him? Because he goes in and writes a fucking test, a written test, and he can bullshit, and then he can talk to a person, superintendent or whoever it is, and says, "Oh yeah, well he's qualified now to work as a captain at the penitentiary." So he just bullshitted on paper, and he just bullshitted to somebody's fucking face. There's got to be somebody out there approving it. So who's approving it? Because nothing has changed down there, man, in fucking 40 years.
No.
The place is still a shithole. It should be shut down.
It should be bulldozed.
What?
It should be bulldozed. It should have been gone a long time ago.
But listen, when Kenny Green's lawyer 4 or 5 years ago went to the media and said, yes, my client, Kenny Green, is basically saying you should bulldoze it. Most people will say, that's only coming from Kenny Green. Kenny Green's been in and out all his fucking life. Listen, he's more educated on the fucking prison system than fucking the majority of us are because he's been in there. So what he is saying is right. And the fall should go right from the top, right to the bottom. Listen, Newfoundland Corrections is 20 years behind anybody off the island.
Sure it is.
And you talk to guys, I've talked to guys down at the pen over the years. Now it's 8 or 9 years ago. I'll keep saying that, but I talked to guys who's done jail right from Newfoundland, right up to Abbotsford, BC, and they will always say that HMP is the worst prison they've ever been to in their entire life.
Horrible. And it's funny because I trained a bunch of guys now in my kickboxing program that are correctional officers here, right? And their approach and the way that they're told to do things and the way things are run here is completely different, right? Like they're the polar opposite of how things are run there, and they're literally trying to rehabilitate people, right? They're trying to help them. There's none of this like punitive. Like you said, let's beat the crap out of someone in a cell.
He said we'll lock them up in the hole is what that's what they want to do.
Right.
It's all about and that's what I've done. And you can find me on YouTube of a NTV interview I done right after I got fired and all that kind of stuff. And I told him, I said, I was ahead of the game in corrections in Newfoundland. There's a different type of inmate. There's a different type of correctional officer. And I wasn't accepted by the majority of the management because my outlook on corrections was different them. And the majority of the gray shirts who were still 20 years in at that point in time hated the fact that I worked that way because I was ahead of the game. And I'm not being modest or any of that kind of shit. I was on the same par, even though I never worked in a federal institution in my life, but I was on the same par as them because I come home after a 12-hour shift and I used to fucking research this stuff
Yep.
because I wanted to make a difference. I really wanted to make a difference in somebody's life. And once I got fired, I had so many guys, inmates, and that's the main thing. I had staff reach out to me and say, I'm going to keep continuing to work just like you. But my biggest thing was having inmates find me on Facebook because I don't hide from anybody. I don't change my name or anything. You want to find me, Ira Layden, that always was. And I had inmates reach out to me. And these inmates would reach out and say, thank you for this. Thank you for that. We know you didn't do nothing illegal. Yes, if I was over at the dentist somewhere waiting on the side of a building having a cigarette with a fucking inmate, yeah, I'll give him a puff of the cigarette or give him a cigarette. But did I ever give a fucking cigarette? Did I ever give drugs and stuff? I bought probably 3 grams of weed my fucking whole lifetime, let alone buy weed to bring inside the prison. But I had inmates reach out and said, thank you for just making me feel human inside the prison when you're so dehumanized.
Well, when I heard about like you getting fired, and I mean, I laughed because I said, and I don't mean I laughed because you got fired. I laughed because of why I heard you got fired, and I was like, that is the biggest pile of bullshit I've ever heard in my life. I know for a fact that is completely not true. That they are they had a thing for you, and they wanted you out, but and they were going to find a way to get rid of you. But I mean, for anybody to say that you were dirty is that's just complete fiction. I mean that's another Owen Brophy creation, right?
Well, and that's the thing. Why? Because you were only allowed to have mixed coffee, but I would take perk Tim Hortons coffee out of my own stash and perk a thing of coffee and pour out to you fellas. To have right. Tim Hortons coffee.
Yeah.
No, you're only allowed those inmates. Well, because they're all scumbags. They're only allowed to have instant coffee. Are you fucking kidding me? Like it's fucking 2010 or whatever the year was, like that kind of shit. Yeah. And
because giving someone a coffee is gonna cause an issue down there, right? It's so stupid.
And like
like I had a guard, I had a guard down there that would bring me in books sometimes, right? Because I couldn't get the books that I wanted in there, right? Oh no. You're helping an inmate read. How terrible!
Listen, right? listen, and I'm guilty of that. I used to read books at home, and then when I'd go in and talk to guys in on the ranges, and I would go in when I would do a sweep of a unit. It wasn't a it wasn't a 2-minute sweep. I'd be in there 20 minutes because I wanted to talk to guys and see how they're doing and this and that. And fellas would say to me, I'd love to have a book. Can't get up to the library. There's not enough staff, so I'd love to have a book. If I had that book at home or a book that was pretty close to it, listen, I'll bring the fucking book in, man. You can have the book.
I mean, what harm is that? It's so stupid because and the thing is, I don't think a lot of people realize, like, so when you're down there, like a lot of times you don't get recreation. You're not supposed to work out. You can't get down to the gym. I know that's changed a little bit now, but if you got to the library, you were lucky, and the library was a piece of crap anyway. There was nothing up there, so there was nothing to occupy you. If you didn't have money yourself, like where you could get things from the canteen or get a TV for yourself, or you get books sent in and whatnot. If you didn't have that, like I read when I was in there, I used to write down every book that I ever read when I was in there, and if I could get my hands on so I read like well over 200 books while I was in there, and I did a college program when I was in there, as you mentioned, and there was lots of things that I did, and I always had a plan because I decided the first day that I went in there that I was done and that I was gonna change my life and move on. But like I would spend my time, but you would never get any respect from a lot of these guys, and they looked at, like you said, they looked at you in a particular way. And you know, I got a little bit more because they knew I didn't come from a full life of that. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
and of course, some were intimidated or whatever by me, and
yeah,
they
yeah.
because of that, but I mean, I always tried to treat everybody with respect. And if you were nice to me, I was nice to you. And that's
Yeah,
the way it was. And that's still my policy in life today. If you're nice to me, I'm nice to you.
that's what mine is.
But I mean, just as an example, I mean, like because a lot of people don't know this, and I got out on December 22nd, 2009.
24th,
24, okay.
22nd, and then you moved up
I'm
there on the
Yeah,
24th.
I was here on the 24th. So I was here on the 24th. By January 3rd, I had a full-time management position. Okay. Two
At a
months later,
hotel.
yeah, 2 months later,
Listen, I love your story. I love your
I
story.
know you do. I know you do. And that's, I mean,
I love your story.
right?
I know
So
everything about
so
you, man.
so like I built, and I built this life up here. So it's not impossible for people to, to rehabilitate themselves. Now I know some of them are obviously up against it a lot more than I was. But
Yeah,
like if you don't treat them with respect in that prison, like you said, that is literally mental torture. I mean, I've seen them take people, throw them in solitary for 30 days. That's illegal, first of all, number one.
listen.
And what does that do to a human mind? Like these
Listen,
people are already mentally checked,
I'll tell you right now. I had an old acquaintance of mine that I went to high school with in Harbor Race. He
Yeah.
come through the system, the boys' home, and he was in foster homes. And his name is Jason Power. And Jason Power has been deceased now for about 12 years. Jason Power had some demons and all that kind of stuff. He was at the pen. He got put down into the hole. I wouldn't be able to tell you what the charge was. It might have been suicidal or something like that. But I tell people this story. Jason Power took a milk carton, small milks that you're able to get, right? Like little small friggin'
Yeah, yeah,
milks.
yeah,
And he took that milk carton and he built a set of shades, almost like Randy Macho Man Savage shades. So
yeah,
that when he was in the hole, because of the light bulb being on, he could just lay that milk carton shades over his eyes. He was in the hole that long that it grew into his fucking nose. And I don't care what anybody says if I'm full of shit. I was there to see it. I brought him to the fucking hospital when he tried to commit suicide a bunch of times. But he spent I'm gonna say 8 or 9 months in down in segregation. The same thing as, like, I don't know, like, if I'm allowed to say names and all that kind of stuff. Paddy Corrigan was another
yeah,
guy that I'm sure
yeah,
they can look up through the system.
yeah,
Paddy Corrigan was a guy who ran. He was a respected guy on the units, and then all of a sudden he gets put down to the hole, and you're going down to the hole for 5 days. You pick up another few charges, and you're down there for another 5. Now you're down for 10. The next thing you're down there for fucking months because they only have to get you out of the hole for 24 hours or 12 or 24 hours before they're allowed to put you back in. Paddy Corrigan spent about a fucking year and a half down there, man.
think
He
about that
went
though.
from a normal, he went from a normal fucking dude to looking like Sideshow Bob,
Yeah.
between Sideshow Bob or Tom Hanks from fucking Castaway.
Well,
I
I mean,
mean,
and
I
I
don't
don't think
know.
people understand what that means. Like, so when you're in segregation, you got a slab of concrete with a mattress on it, the lights on
Oh,
24
fuck
hours a
yeah.
day, right? And you're in there, you can't talk to anyone, you have no concept of time other than when people bring you your meals, right? So I mean, imagine
Yeah.
being in there for 9 months, what that's going to do to your mind.
I have me being sane mind right now. I would say after 5 to 6 days, I'd find something to. I'd make some way to do myself off. If I was in for a sentence, like say a 2 or 3 year sentence, knowing I had to do jail time for 2 or 3 years, and I was in segregation, having to do whatever I had to do down there for I'd never last 20 days,
No, no, it's
knowing
rough.
that over a 3 year sentence I could be sent down there again. Listen, just take me out.
And then you're going to take that
Just take
guy
me out. Fucking
and
hang me.
expect him to go back out on the street and be normal. And be
Listen,
normal.
I've
He's
seen it.
not right. It's not going to happen. And I mean, I know so many stories down there where people were beaten when they were down there and
Yeah,
strapped in chairs and beaten, and
yeah,
guards coming in, under the influence and dragging guys out of cells, and there's so many stories, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I
Oh,
saw a
yeah.
lot of things down there myself, but I don't think people realize what's going on down there, and I don't think they realize what these guys go through, and you become institutionalized too, right? And it's very difficult for them to get back out and be a functional human being, right? Because again, if you're treated like a piece of dog, you're already uneducated, you've got a long criminal record. Now they're putting you in solitary for long periods of time. Philly's a great example of that. They've done that to him multiple times. I mean, and then this poor kid is supposed to get out there and try and be a normal human being, and I'm sorry,
Right.
you're not, and you're not going to be, right?
But what happens, I find also, is that it's not only the inmates who are institutionalized. I find that staff members, correctional officers, get institutionalized over time also.
Mm-hmm.
People can
Well,
go
yeah,
in
yeah.
there.
You get guys. I mean, I've seen so many guys talking about it, how they have post-traumatic stress disorder and all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, I'm thinking about some of them. I know, fuck, I saw the same things you saw, and you know what I mean, like, oh, right, but they're it's a hard life, man. I mean, it's not an easy job. You see a lot of crap, you see a lot of things, and you're doing things a lot of times that you don't agree with, and it's got to be hard on the mind.
You become like, as an officer, you become decentralized from what's normal, because you go in, you hear so many stories, you see what's accepted in there. I mean, Jesus, you would never walk down the aisle of a Walmart and slap a person or punch a person in the face or tell them to go fuck themselves or that you're a dirtbag. But that's accepted inside the prison, whether it's coming from a staff member or an inmate or whatever.
Yep.
So over time, decentralization is legit. And for a staff member, they call it PTSD. But for an inmate, they just call it institutionalization.
Yeah, institutionalized. It's the same thing, though, right? At the
And
end of the day,
it's the exact same fucking thing, man.
sure it
So
is.
the
They can't
inmates
they can't
have
function.
PTSD, but the inmate never ever had a fucking chance, because at least the staff can come out every 8 to 12 hours
Yeah,
and
you're
kind of
there all
see
day long, right?
reality. Whereas an
But
inmate,
but you know what? And I'll tell you something. I just thought of something so you talk about it being the culture, and it totally is, because I'll tell you something. In Stephenville, there was these two young guards that were just starting out, right? And one day they gave me attitude over something, and I got pissed off, And then the guard was a little intimidated, and he actually came over and talked to me, and I said, "Listen, man." I said, I watched you. I walked into the lunch area there, and you're staring at me, and you're, all this kind of stuff. And I'm not the guy for that. But I mean, but anyway, I'm just going to let you know, don't, because they were going to the penitentiary. And I knew they were going to the penitentiary, and I said to him, don't go down to the penitentiary acting like that, because you're going to end up running into a problem. And I heard afterwards that this guard got badly assaulted when he went down there. And I believe it was on the PC unit that he got assaulted. And he ended up talking. He was a twin. He ended up talking about his post-traumatic stress disorder. And he ended up. I remember seeing him in the paper. He had post-traumatic stress disorder.
he wasn't the tooth puller, was he? He wasn't the dentist puller.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Once you said, oh well, there's two different twin that I know, but when you said that there, I'm thinking it's the guy who was fired in the last couple of years and just charged and pled guilty to pulling teeth. And the reason why, when you said the West Coast, there was two brothers, and they might not be twins, but they might be just a year apart. But I've heard like stories myself about, like guys like that, and the same thing. Like when I worked at the penitentiary, there was guys down there like that who they thought their dick was bigger than yours. They had no problems giving you the gears, like I said, a while back, that they had no problems giving you the gears inside the prison, but they got to realize that there's fucking repercussions in real life society for doing that kind of shit, because these guys are going to get out eventually. And instead of going in and trying to be a fucking asshole and then end up having you and your wife and kids having to hide under a fucking table at a restaurant, go in and make some purpose out of your life, man. Go in and talk to these guys, treat them like fucking, treat them like fucking humans.
Do your job, but treat them like humans. Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, if you got to do your job, if you got a lot, when you got to do something, you got to do it. But I'll tell you. So I was home last time I was home. I think it was back in New Flannel. I think it was 2015, 2016 anyway. And it's funny because I was in the Avalon Mall, and
Yeah.
I'm walking through the Avalon Mall, and obviously, I mean, I've got no grudges against anybody down there or anything like that. But I saw a particular correction officer, and he looked at me, and he literally spun on his heels and walked in the other direction. Now he didn't need to do that. I mean, it was funny to me actually. I cracked up laughing kind of to myself because I was like, but he was a dick when he was down there. Not even to me. I didn't even have any incidents with him, but he was a bit of a dick when he was down there. And I'm like,
You
I was
know he
like,
was a dick.
and how is it that you are so scared that the second you see somebody who, I mean, at that point I was out, 7, 8 years, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're still so scared that you see somebody and you run away from them. Like, why would you want to live your life like that? I don't know.
That's the thing. That's not life. That's not life to me. I mean, yeah, I went down there for a job, and I wanted to make a, to help somebody eventually, and all that kind of shit. But it's not worth being a fucking asshole, man, to somebody that you got to change your whole lifestyle outside of there, and to
Exactly.
be afraid of somebody 10
That
years
you
down the
can't
road.
that you can't go to the
I
mall.
run into these guys. I don't go downtown anymore to George Street or any of that kind of shit. But from time to time, like you go to Shamrock City or something, which is
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
for sure.
whatever. I run into these guys. Like, you remember Lappy?
Yeah, 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 Lappy, yeah, yeah,
Right? Well, you run
yeah,
into fucking Lappy downtown, and I'll bring him in, and I'll have a beer with him.
yeah.
Why be? I don't want to live a life of being afraid or any of
Well,
that
that's
kind
why.
of
But
stuff.
that's
Like,
why you can now. That's why today you can walk around and not have to think about any of that, though, right? Because
I've
at the
had
end,
guys buy me beer, and
yeah,
I've
for
bought
sure,
beer,
for sure.
and
That,
I've the other thing is that I seen one of your other podcasts. Who was it? It was you and oh fuck, what's the buddy from Grand Bank, the comedy guy?
oh, Colin,
You're
yeah,
very
Colin Hall,
good.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Colin Holland. And there was something in that podcast that I can't remember. Whatever it is it brings me back to this story right now. But it was something that you mentioned or Colin mentioned in that there. But I knew you said that you were talking about in that your very first podcast ever of working in prison, and or not working in prison, sorry, doing time in prison, and now 4 or 5 guys that you know are deceased,
yeah,
murdered, and all that kind of shit.
yep,
One of those guys is probably a fellow that lived here at my house, because I had a guy in who was in prison, come from a great family, and his parents gave him tough love. He had nowhere to go. I moved him in here into
yeah,
my house, straightened him out, all that kind of shit. And I'm back in school, but he was murdered in broad daylight over in Mundy Pond.
yeah, yeah,
John
yeah.
Collins, David Collins.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I know
yeah.
him as John Collins, but Dave Collins. And I was wondering if that was one of the guys that
That's
you
one of
were
them, yeah,
mentioning.
yeah. That's one of them, yeah, yeah. And I mean,
Yeah,
like
I mean,
like,
and that's the thing, like, and that's when I'm going back to saying that my job was a correctional officer, but it was not to affect or to inflict punishment or for me and my family to be afraid of anybody on our off time. And that's
exactly.
why when I knew this guy was hurting and needed support or love or whatever the fuck he needed, I brought him in here, tried to straighten him out, and that's my personality, my family's personality, and all that kind of stuff.
That's good, man. And
Straighten him
that, but
out,
see
got him in.
but that's called being a good human being, right? So Ira,
Exactly.
I want to end on a positive note. Now, what are you doing with your life now, my friend? You're working in the
So
oil
right
industry, I
now,
believe.
after yeah, exactly. So after 8 9 years, 8 9 years ago, being fired from the Her Majesty's Penitentiary, the correction system, Justice Department of Newfoundland and Labrador, I went back and done courses at Marine Institute and all that kind of stuff, and I'm an able-bodied seaman. I work for a major international. I won't give the name. I won't say it, but I will. Right. I work for as an able-bodied seaman, which is basically I'm a glorified deckhand,
Yeah,
going back and forth in the industry. He ran Hibernia, all that kind of stuff. I'm living the dream, man. And as much as I hated the fact that I was fired 8, 9 years ago, that I had to leave the justice system on their terms, it was a blessing in disguise because my whole mental life, my whole life, everything about my life changed because I spent my last 8, 9 years in prison, heavily medicated on antidepressants and all that kind of stuff from the things I've seen. I'm sure you probably say that I was PTSD, but I don't use that. But
nah, you're like me, man. That's just part of life, right? We saw what we saw, right?
It's part of life. I getting, whatever, and no longer medicated. Probably the biggest oil company, Irving in Canada, North America, probably because they got their hands in everything. Gave me an opportunity and a chance, and I worked for a company called Atlantic Towing, based out of St. John, New Brunswick. And I tell everybody the story of me being an ex-correctional officer. I tell many people the story of meeting you because you have been an inspiration. You have been an inspiration in my life. You don't think it, but your situation of going to jail and coming out of jail and doing the things that you have done has inspired not just me but many other fucking guys, man.
I appreciate you saying that, man.
You were the guy. Listen, you were the guy that they counted out. But you're a fucking legend, man. You're a legend. You beat the system that was against you, and all that kind of shit. But as you said, that other people gave you a chance from getting out of prison.
They sure did. They sure did. Yeah.
Most people would think that once I got fired from prison, they thought that I was doing it for all the wrong reasons, and this company gave me an opportunity and chance. And I mean, within 4 months, I'm on the sunshine list, and all you got to do is look up the sunshine list in Newfoundland, which is a government thing.
Yeah. So, well, and I want to close it off, brother, and saying like I'm going to tell you, I said it at the beginning, and I'll say it again. At the end of the day, you were unjustly fired. I know you were unjustly fired. I know you were never involved in anything. And at the end of the day, I'm really happy that you're doing well. And I appreciate you coming on. You are a fine gentleman, and you always were. And you did a lot of people good in there. Where a lot of, like I said, you made people feel like human beings that needed that and needed someone to show them a bit of respect. And I know there's a lot of people that appreciate it. And I'm glad. I'm really happy to hear that you're doing well, brother. And I thanks a lot for coming on the show, man. I appreciate it.
Listen, man, thanks for having me, and thanks for inviting me on and letting me vent. And I love the fact, like I say, I'll say once again, I love the fact that you're, after making such a good life for yourself, after being in a place in your life or in a dungeon and all that kind of stuff, and coming out on top. And I hope you go further. And anytime your technical buddy there needs a sparring partner, I can fight him.
There you go.
But you ain't got somebody up there.
I forgot to tell you.
I've been to Illinois before.
Have you? You should come up, man. You know who walked in my gym there a little while ago? You're gonna laugh at this now. Hayden.
ADAM.
Hayden. He walked in. Yeah, I train his grandkids.
Yeah, Adam Hayden?
Yeah, like Hayden, correctional officer Hayden, old.
Oh, yeah. Miles Hayden.
Miles Hayden. Yeah. He's retired, right? He was up here.
RCMP now.
Yeah.
He's been.
He was up here. He walked in the gym. He walked in the gym, and I've been training his grandkids for a while, and we had a good chat, man.
He is a good fella.
He's a good dude. Yeah.
Better guy. He is a good fella. You can shoot the shit with him, and he's.
Yeah.
Good
dude. Good dude.
And he is ex-RCMP also, but
yeah.
He's a
great guy, man.
If it's Miles Hayden, you're good. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't even realize it. It was funny, like, because his daughter said, "I think you know my dad," and I'm like, "Oh, so cool." And then a few weeks later, he was up visiting him or whatever, and he came in and had a chat with me, man. It was good.
Yeah. Now there was a couple of Haydens though. There was Miles and there was Tony.
Yeah. I don't know.
Tony didn't stick around very much, but if it's
I don't remember him. Miles was the one. He used to work in the property room, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly, in the clothing room. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a good fella. Like you could
he's a
talk
good
to him
dude.
and shoot the shit and all that kind of stuff. Listen, he
Yeah,
might be a fella to come on and do a fucking podcast
yeah,
with
he'd
you.
probably be a good guy too. Yeah, for sure.
Well,
Cool.
ex corrections, ex whatever, but he is a good fella. He is a
He
good fella.
knows. He
But no,
knows. Yeah.
listen, man, it's fucking deadly that you're doing well
Yep.
and that you beat the system. As many correctional officers puts down. I hate saying the name inmate, but they don't want anybody to succeed. It's deadly that you are one of the guys who beat the system and are living better than the fucking majority of the guys working down there.
Yeah. Yeah. For
Keep
sure.
on going.
Thanks,
Yeah,
brother.
keep on going. But I've been to Yellowknife years ago, and that was so
Well, if you get up
great
here
and small,
again,
dude.
man, yeah, let me know. And then Greg. I mean, Greg's a
Great,
great guy.
great.
Yeah.
Well, great, exactly. So, and like Todd Parsons is still there. I haven't talked to Todd
Yeah,
in
Todd's a
months
union.
and
He's with the
years.
union, right? Yeah. Yeah.
He's the president. He's been the president for about 20, 25 years.
Yeah. Good
But
dude.
I was up with him and his father and everything back in the early 80s when everybody lived in trailer homes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trailer home hero cost you $500,000 now.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And I'd say my Uncle Jake probably owned about 7 or 8 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're
But no,
worth
thanks
a
for
lot more
having
than what
me
he
on
paid for them.
all that kind of stuff, man. And listen, if you ever want to do it again, we can do it
Yeah,
again.
we can do it again sometime for sure, buddy. Sounds good, man. We'll talk to you
Yeah.
soon, brother. All
Okay,
right, thanks,
thanks,
man.
man.